We're back to 12-minute episodes of Amphibia this week with the comical-sounding Hop Till You Drop and the far more serious-sounding Turning Point. And I gotta say, well, one of these episodes I feel definitely had a stronger impact on me than the other. They were both really good. This new era of the show is already turning out to be pretty much as great as I expected it to be. Fortunately for me, because I definitely want to talk about the second in these two episodes more than the first. I don't have a lot to say about the first one. It's one of those ones where if I explain it too much, it ruins the joke. And I don't want to risk that for people who haven't seen the episode yet. But it's about Anne getting annoyed with how the planters are still finding their way in the human world. And so she tries to speedrun them through their character development and get them up to snuff with how things work here. Her reasoning being that she was thrown into the deep end in Amphibia, and she survived and grew as a person and learned how things work there. Not realizing that early in her development, there was a whole lot of stuff that the planters helped her with that she didn't notice. And it's really funny, each of the three of them has something that they need to work on, and so she takes them to the mall, which is where the Hop Till You Drop name comes from. It's the play on Shop Till You Drop, obviously. And she puts them in scenarios that test them and force them to resist the impulse to give in to these problematic urges. And at first it seems like it's going to work, but it's just because she's watching them and they're worried about what she'll say if they screw up in front of her. It's clear that they're not actually learning anything from this. They're not actually growing as people. They're just learning to suppress the behavior, which isn't really what you want. It's interesting in this show that is made up of so many message episodes that the message of this one is sometimes the situation you're put in doesn't cause you to grow and learn a message. Sometimes all you do is get from point A to point B. It felt shockingly realistic for a show about fantasy frog people. But in the end, the planters do recognize that they have growth to undergo, and it seems like they're going to try to get there. They're going to actively work on it, which is cool, because that's another thing that characters don't often do in these kinds of message episode shows. Usually they just learn lessons as they come, and that develops them to the point they need to be by the time the story happens. It's rare that you see a character acknowledge that they have to actively work towards reaching a certain stage in their development and agree to take the steps to get there. Most importantly, though, and as I alluded to at the top of this section of the review, this one's funny. It's a comedy episode. It gave us that development for the characters, but it did so through a whole bunch of sight gags and humorous scenarios. Like, there's a modern art joke in here that I thought was pretty funny, and they, winked at the camera about it, too. It was done in good spirits. The episode basically called all of capitalistic advertising a scam, which, I liked that. And Anne even resolved one of the disastrous situations that the planters got themselves in by weaponizing a group of Karens. It was very funny. But really, this is just the kind of episode that had to happen. We had to get at least one episode where these characters were so overwhelmed with the human world that they had to actively decide to learn about the human world. Right? That only makes sense. I will say, though, I'm a little bit annoyed, just a tad, because they're mostly using it for comedic effect. When he really needs to step up, he does. But I'm a little annoyed that the show keeps treating Hop Pop like he's just one of the kids, when he's supposed to be an adult. An adult who feels responsible enough for all of these kids that he stole the music box that one time, for example. Right? That's a little frustrating, but I can't imagine that this is a trend that's going to continue into more serious forays. And either way, that doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the episode. The episode was still perfectly enjoyable enough. As someone who watches this show at least as much for the characters and lore as I do for the humor, though, Turning Point was the more exciting episode to me. It picks up from Sasha's perspective immediately after the events that led up to Anne and the planters getting stuck on Earth. and shows how she and Grime reacted to what happened, how they recovered from the crippling loss inflicted on them by Andreas. We see all of their supporters, soldiers, collaborators being captured and imprisoned, but they managed to escape and end up in Wortwood of all places, and decide that the best thing for them to do, since they need to lay low at least for a while, is to pretend like they're there to help the town in Anne's absence so that the townspeople will take them in. And Grime is totally okay with this. He's totally okay with playing this straight. But Sasha is not a bad person. I've been saying this for a long time, that all she really needed was to see the true consequences of her more vicious side to change. And she comes right out in the episode and says that she can't take advantage of these people. She can't cause harm to these people, because it ends up that they need to flee and basically use the townspeople as a scapegoat to cover their escape. She can't do it because she's seen the consequences of everything she's done here, and it's causing her to rethink the kind of person she is, and so she swears to defend the town. And at first Grime doesn't stick with her, but in the end he recognizes that he values her too much. Maybe he should give this a chance. And so Sasha, becoming a better version of the person that she is, begins to redeem herself, and through the bond she has formed with this other character, begins to redeem him as well. And it's so appropriate that it's happening in the same town, surrounded by all of the same people who changed Anne so much for the better. And like, as much as I want to talk about this episode, that's really all I have to say about it, which is weird. It's a weird thing to say that. Like, there's action stuff in this episode, and we get to see how vicious the townspeople can be, and Grime was very impressed with that, and it was very funny. And there was this really cool robot. It's based on this kind of toad. I'm not going to try to pronounce what it's called. It's this freaky thing that grows its babies in its skin until they're basically at their adult stage, and then they pop out. Totally harmless to the mom, but kind of creepy, like in a cool way, though. And the robot that they fought in this episode was a clear reference to it. I love how this show does that. I love how they reference various real-world creatures through not just the people of Amphibia, but the technology. And it was good. It was good action. And it was really cool getting to see more of the kinds of robots that Andreas can create now that he has full control of the music box and its power, at least assumedly. But it was also cool to see that despite the fact that they have to work at it a little bit, Sasha and Grime are capable enough of dealing with these threats. So while we're going to have Monster of the Week stuff back on Earth, it looks like, it seems like we're going to have Monster of the Week stuff in Amphibia too, from Sasha's perspective. And that excites me greatly, because one of the things I wanted most from this season of the show, now that Sasha has come into the narrative more, is more Sasha-focused episodes. And it's really cool. We got a scene in the trailers of Sasha finding Anne's diary. It was cool to see how much of an impact that had on her, and how much that contributed to her deciding to protect the townspeople in earnest. I don't know, it was just really good. It was a really good emotional Sasha episode. If you're someone who's on the fence about Sasha as a character, this is definitely one to watch. She comes off really well in this one. I definitely feel like, despite how much of a jerk she's been, her redemption is not only possible, but also well underway at this point. And just like with last week's episodes, this one does a really good job of setting the stage for that and getting me really excited to see what is going to come of this new status quo for her. But yeah, overall, excellent episodes, both of them. They didn't give me a lot to think about in and of themselves, but they speak to the potential of this season quite well and have me basically just as hype as I was last week, but like, it continues the hype through, if that makes sense. As per usual, I'd like to know, what do you think of the Amphibia episodes Hop Till You Drop and The Turning Point, if you have seen them? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.